all about remembering where we've been, where we're going, and taking up space in the present through the art of storytelling. I'm your host, Teka, and I will tie together the practice of presence, life lessons, and some mental health and faith nuggets too. Whether sharing my own experiences or featuring a special guest, I hope to inspire you to take control of your story and take control of your life. I hope you receive what you need from today's episode, and remember to check out the description and the show notes for any links that we reference in today's show. Are you ready? Let's do Today, we are excited to have guest Krystle Dorsey, M.Ed. Krystle is a career counselor, social justice advocate, writer, and change agent. She has 12 plus years, more than 12 years, guys, of experience as a career services professional, primarily in the higher education industry. She is also the CEO and founding editor, of Uplift Opportunity Career Services, LLC, a career services and media platform specializing in the needs of men and women of color. She helps her clients and followers get unstuck in their careers and prepares them for their next opportunity. You can find Krystle on her blog, krystledorsey.com/blog, or follow her on Instagram and Twitter at KD_uplifts_U. Hey, Krystle.
Hey, girl.
Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited. One, because you answered the call, and I'm really excited that people are going to hear your story. They'll be inspired and encouraged by it. But before we get into all of that, do you want to tell the listeners how we know each other?
Right. So, oh my goodness. It was so awesome. I got invited to a birthday party by one of our mutual family members. I don't know if Teka shared this before, but, we used to be a part of, I'm still a part, but we are a part. We're a part of a social justice organization. And I met our mutual friend and he invited me out. And so Teka, you were like the first one, I believe, that greeted me when I came. We were at the rooftop. Yeah, like we were invited to like this really nice rooftop spot for our mutual friend's birthday. And yeah, Teka was very warm and say, hey, what's your name? Introduce herself. And we've just been kicking it in our family group ever since.
Ever since. Love that. Was that 2018 or 2019? I feel like it was.
That was 2018.
Was it 18?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. So it's been
can you believe
almost
it?
5 years.
5 years, girl. The time is flying. Yeah, I mean, that was my first year I moved here. So I moved here in 2018. Yep. I'm an introvert. I'll probably share that again sometime during our episode. So I moved here in mid-June, and I got myself together, got myself collected, and I was like, okay, cool. I need to get out. And this particular social justice organization, that we're a part of has really been a great aspect for me to be connected in other spaces. So I was really excited to come to Richmond to be able to be involved. And so come September, I rolled up to my first meeting, and that same month is the month of our mutual friend's birthday. So it was like bam, bam, bam. And that was the summer. It's technically fall, but ultimately still in Virginia, the summer of 2018.
Listen, we were outside. It was 2018.
Yes, it was. And it was the perfect day for that. Like, it couldn't have gotten, to this day, our fan group, that was an epic
birthday.
It was epic. It was like the music was good, the people, the vibe, the atmosphere. It was just, we still talk about that thing.
And I love that you said, it's through mutual friends. You were an introvert. You moved here and you got connected. And I feel like I can relate to that. I'm not necessarily an introvert. I feel like I'm an extrovert with introvert tendencies. But we both came to a new city, got connected, and the trajectory of our lives changed, maybe from what we expected and in some unexpected ways. And so I'm really excited about you sharing kind of how your journey and how your story evolved, not just when you got to this new city, but also before that. So when you think about, I asked you this question earlier, when you think about the book, if there's a book about your life, whether it's an autobiography, biography, what would the title be? And you shared that it would be Make It Work, right? And then kind of like subtitle, Determination and Faith, a story of determination and faith. And I want you to share with the listeners why you chose that title first. What does that mean to you?
Right. So it is also a bit of a play on words, right? Because I'm a career professional. So Make It Work is like finding meaningful work, essentially, but also understanding that, especially as a person of color, a woman of color, a Black woman, and has very strong ties to the Latinx community as well. I have several Latinx community family members, realizing that is not always cut and dry for us, that there are several obstacles that we may face as a result of the multiple identities that we have. And, everybody has challenges in their life, not just, of course, people of color, but there are very real things like, being first generation, a college student, and then becoming a professional, and then what that looks like. But also, what does it mean to be marginalized in a predominantly white space? What does it mean to be discriminated against? What does it mean to have to code switch? Like, these are very unique, girl. What does it mean to be a token X in a space? Like, these are very unique experiences that people of color and people of diverse backgrounds have in a diverse space. So Make It Work is a play on words in terms of whatever you come up against in that journey, you got to make it work. And the way that I made it work is through determination and faith, having a clear view of my purpose at a very young age. And I know that is also very unique, but I think that is what gave me saving grace. In complete honesty, I think having so much purpose, especially so early in life, I realized, I was meant to be a counselor / therapist. And again, we'll tweak that through a little later. But I realized my purpose literally when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
And I believe having that purpose that early helped me to filter a lot of the other excess challenges and obstacles that I may have faced. And so that has definitely been a catalyst as well as a tool. It is also a source of resiliency for me in order to make it work.
Make it work.
Make it work.
So I'm really interested to hear about how, because you shared that you knew your purpose at a very young age, and that is not common. When I was 12, girl, I just saw a post today on Instagram about all the music that was out when we were 12. I was worried about going to the middle school house parties. I was worried about what I was wearing and when I could go to the mall. Not a lot of people are clear about their purpose. I think we know what we like. We're figuring out what we like, and maybe if we want to pursue a certain career. But tell listeners a little bit about how knowing your purpose that early helped you on that journey towards your career, towards not just your career, but your life's path, your life's journey, how knowing your purpose that early really informed that.
Yeah. So I would say definitely like what we're talking about, knowing my purpose that early gave me a sense of clarity, and it helped me to prioritize my time. And it also helped me to be very strategic about the things that I pursued. Because, there is an essence to really life in general. If you haven't seen it or you don't know what you're looking for, you don't know what to look out for in this sense. So, without, getting too, tearjerker and everything, I had a very difficult childhood, right? I would have probably been considered an at-risk youth. Now, on the surface, I probably look great. I come from a middle-class family. My mom technically, has a couple of college degrees, but my parents were divorced. And that mother relationship, especially when I was younger, was a bit complicated. I'm the only child, so a lot of times I was left independent to my own devices, and even back then I could see how I was also a very introverted child. So I wasn't very socialized. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. And so I also think, and there's some other things that you can tweeze out, like me being light-skinned and me having good hair. There were things that I felt that I received jealousy about, my intelligence and things of that nature. So long story short, I was targeted and even bullied a lot when I was younger. And having that experience really made me sit back. And again, being a reflective child, things like that, with my introversion, it always made me wonder, like, why do people respond to me like this? Like, I'm not doing nothing to them. I'm minding my own business. Like, why do people feel some, type of way, basically, of me being myself? Right. And that really made me process that. And, the other things that, that I felt challenging or were dealing with at the time, it made me wonder, clearly I need help. I'm not really getting it. I don't know how to ask for help. Like, what is the type of person that helps people go through their difficulties? And I approached my 6th grade teacher and asked him that very question. And he was like, that person's basically called a therapist. And I said, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. That's what I want to be. And I said, well, what do you need to do in order to be that? And he was like, you have to go to college. So I said, bet. Well, I'm going to college. And I have a grandmother, God rest her soul. She was my, motherly figure growing up. She was a teacher in the inner city. So she was not playing games about my future. She had already told me, like, you're basically going to college. But for what was not really, apparent to me until I had that experience. So granted, to answer your question, when I was in middle school, I put a lot of effort into my academics, not that I didn't already, but it gave me even more motivation and determination to really make myself eligible for things like college through the grades that I had, the classes that I would take, because that's another thing that's really on my heart and I'm passionate about as a career advisor. A lot of people come from the mind that, we got to get high school kids ready for college. And the reality is college prep starts in middle school.
It starts younger. Yeah.
It starts much younger than that. And our kids particularly are a lot of times not aware of that. And they're not put in the right classes to challenge them in order to be on that path. So I think, again, having that determination, putting more effort into my grades made me, I guess, it put me on the radar for my teachers, and they put me in a college prep program. So 7th grade, 8th grade, I'm on a college prep program. I'm learning these, college skills, and that's how I leverage my opportunities. I was put into basically high school classes in middle school.
Wow.
And I continued that trajectory. I was in honors classes, AP classes in high school because I know that's what I needed to do.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I was going to college, right? And as well, I was very strategic about even the classes that I took in college. I took psychology. I was like, if I want to be a psychologist, if I want to be a therapist, or I'm thinking of going in this particular industry, I'm going to take a psychology class so I can already be, introduced to this subject matter. Took sociology classes. Took, Spanish was also really passionate about because, again, with the connection to, my Latinx, family members, like I wanted to use that in a professional space. So I wanted, the formal aspect of Spanish as well. And I continued to that, and I continued that into my college years as well. Wow. So that's how it helped me filter, because I went into every next level of my experience knowing, like, this is the goal. This is what I need. And these are the specific classes, opportunities, in some cases, even people that I really need to be connected with. Yeah. And so all that other stuff, the bullying, the not fitting in, you know, some other things, it just never, I don't know how to explain what I'm saying, but I think you get it. It's like, it's all background stuff for me. Like, I'm not going to focus on that. Like, I'm not going to let that deter me. And I came to my faith, I believe, around 13 as well. So interesting. I realized my purpose before I accepted Christ and got baptized. So that's also very interesting. But I think having that extra faith as well around that same time even further catapulted it, because my ability to learn how to pray and, you know, things of that nature was strengthened. Reading the Bible, knowing certain scriptures to help motivate me was also really helpful.
All of that was a tool. And, you know, I love that you said, you know, of course, the experiences from your childhood, right? Feeling maybe other, or feeling like people were picking on you or teasing you. And you were like, I don't really understand why it seems that I'm not fitting in. I can relate to that, because when you are set apart, meaning there is a purpose for you that may not be the norm, or it's meant specifically for you, you're going to feel set apart sometimes. And it kind of sounds like that would kind of be like the epilogue. Is it epilogue? What's in the beginning of a book? I think it's
prologue, I think.
A prologue.
I think it's the prologue.
It'll be the prologue to your story.
Or introduction, you know, depending on nonfiction, fiction.
Yes.
I got you. Yeah.
It'll be that to your story. But then after that, you let all of that you experienced be almost kind of like the key that turned in the door to open you up to other opportunities, because then here you are connecting to certain teachers. They're giving you the resources that you need to take the classes that'll put you on the path towards being the person that you needed when you were younger, being a counselor, being a therapist. And so you talked a little bit about how in college you were like, okay, I'm clear. I know that I want to pursue this path. I'm going to take these courses. Tell us a little bit about that experience of being in college, being in grad school, and how, you know, we're going from childhood kind of feeling set apart to now I'm in college. Did you still feel that way? Or did you feel like you started to kind of find your people, find your fit? What did that look like?
So that is such a monumentous question for me. Because like I told you, I was the only child. So I had my own bedroom. I had my own stuff. In some cases, I even had my own bathroom, right? Yeah. And so I told you as well that my parents were divorced, but my dad was a continuous pillar in my life, even though he was in the military and moved around. So by the time I got, and this is a really important part of the story, I promise you, I'm not going on a rabbit hole, but my dad at the time was stationed at the Pentagon in the Air Force. And it's actually a 9/11 survivor. So that's also like really deep, because like had my dad not survived 9/11, my story would be completely different. Because luckily, you know, praise be to God, and also empathy for those, you know, who don't have that same, you know, story or ending in terms of the trauma of 9/11. I went to college and lived with my dad my first 2 years, because I got to those dorm rooms on a college tour trip, and I was like, I'm not doing this. This is nasty. Like, sharing no bathroom with a whole bunch of people that I don't know. So interestingly enough, because I was a commuter student my first 2 years, it really continued to set me apart, because I believe in hindsight, of course, you don't get that experience of being on campus, making friends, getting involved, you know, all this other kind of stuff. And it really hit me, especially as an introvert, my second year when my father deployed. So my father deployed, he had one of his last deployment assignments in my second year as a sophomore. And when I tell you how lonely I was, Teka, like, I didn't even have a parent at that point. You know what I mean? I literally was just going to class and in some cases going to work, and that was it. And it was just me. And I can't say at that time I was particularly like depressed, but it definitely, my mood was not there. And so interesting enough, again, this is a hand of God on my life. I was going to some event, and I think there was a guy in one of my classes, and he approached me and he said, hey, you know, I think you'd be really great for becoming an orientation leader. And I was like, orientation leader? I was like,
that goes from being by yourself to now being in a crowd of people.
And that's the thing. That was the thing. When I got involved in the process of me becoming an orientation leader, I really learned the value of being connected to, one, a higher mission with people, a diverse group of people. It also grew me professionally. But I would say, again, the most meaningful thing that I learned by being a student leader is the value of meaningful relationships. Because I was, for the first time, put in an environment of like-minded people.
Right. And there's your people there.
Right. And who are all had a set of goals and, you know, a sense of, you know, meaning of giving back. And, you know, a lot of the values that for me were missing in other places of my life, I found in that moment. I found also, you know, strong people that were like role models that really cared about, you know, my development and really saw me for who I was. So that was the game changer for me. And it really matured me in that way. And it got me, and that, again, going along with the story, that was the seed planted in me for the passion for higher ed.
Wow. Because so then you're working in higher ed at that point.
And now I'm working in higher ed. So because I leveraged that experience, again, that's now my network. That's now putting me in a particular environment to hone and develop my skills. And that put me on the trajectory essentially for higher ed. And again, I pursued therapy, obviously, up into my master's program. And you know, I was sitting these DSM, you know, Teka, you know, you a therapist. So I was sitting these DSM classes and these assessment classes, and I would just be like, this isn't as interesting to me.
It's a lot.
As I thought it would be. And, you know, they're breaking down the DSM and the variations of what it describes. And I was like, that do not fit for Latin people. Like, y'all talking what we, you know, what y'all saying is anxiety and this and this and this. This is like, that is just us expressing ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, we're, you know, just being more like passionate and, I don't know how to explain it, but, you know, just being in tune with your environment and more cognizant of your feelings, you're going to appear hysterical to maybe a culture that doesn't present or express themselves as passionately in certain ways.
That's why awareness is so important.
I could not get with the lack of cultural awareness and competency and a lot of these like more mental health therapy classes for one. But like I told you, because I had already been bit by the higher ed bug and I had been in situations where I had talked to younger people about their college dreams and aspirations. I had helped family members with their different goals and aspirations. When I got to my career class in my master's program, it just clicked for me.
Wow.
I was like, this is it. This is the thing that I really resonated with.
Wow.
And that was a change. That is, for me, a walk of faith in that period of time. And you guys know, you have been on my IG lives about Leaps of Faith, and I just, relaunched another one. So check it out on my IG live.
Instagram.
The videos are there. It was a great conversation. But as you imagine, like we're talking about, I had committed at that point 12 years to becoming a therapist.
So now we're taking a shift.
So now we're taking a shift, and it rocked my boat because I was like, I said I was going to be a therapist. And this career, I didn't even know, Teka, like again, I didn't even know what a career counselor was up until that point.
But you've experienced them because essentially those teachers, the resources that you were connected to that got you on the path towards college, essentially that's sort of what they were doing. maybe they didn't know it, but in a sense, that's what they were doing. So it sounds like that pivot was not a coincidence. It was very divine. It was purposed for you.
It was the hand of God on my life, 100%. And I am not shy with admitting that. And I even went to essentially the career services office.
Yeah.
You know, and they just checked my resume, but I didn't know like career counseling was an actual process, just like counseling is, of talking to somebody about their thoughts, their feelings, the challenges that they're having, and how to connect the appropriate resources, just like you said people did for me in my life. I didn't know that was an actual discipline that somebody could have until I got to grad school. And I was a little resistant. I even had the opportunity to start my internship for my counseling program in career services and was offered it. God creating the flow and the pathway in my life, you know, opening doors, because, you know, apparently that is my gift, right?
Right. See,
but Teka, you know, I turned that thing down, and, you know, God was like, girl.
You did?
What did I tell you? Yes, girl. So this is the part of this, because I turned it down because I was set on, I'm supposed to be a therapist. I'm not ready to let it go of all this commitment that and the time and the money and that I put into it.
Can we talk about that really quick?
Yes.
All right, y'all. Bookmark. Because this is a prime example of what happens when you have an idea of what you think you should be doing, right? You know how they say, tell God your plans if you want to see him or hear him laugh, if you want to laugh. We have an idea of what we want it to look like. We have a picture in our mind of what we want the story to play out as. And whenever that does not happen, or when we have to let that go, it feels like a form of loss in a sense. We're resistant.
It is a mourning.
Yes. We're resistant. We're pushing against it. We're questioning. Sometimes the doubt comes up. And this is another space where that faith, that surrender has to take over, where you have to say, you know what? At this point, I have to take my hand off of it and just kind of allow whatever God is doing, whatever my higher power is doing, to take over. Because clearly the way that I'm trying to go about it is not working out. I need to let it go, right? Even like you said, even turning down opportunities that you were like, oh, this ain't for me. In my mind, I'm supposed to be doing counseling. I'm supposed to be a therapist. Why would I be in a career counseling office? So because of that experience, that internship, that grad school experience, tell us about, okay, y'all, we're back, open the book. Tell us about, having to kind of like surrender to the process at that point, because rejecting that internship, what came after that?
Yes, again, that is a story. And it's a very important, like you said, like a chapter in the story of really learning to actively surrender my purpose to God. Because a part of the struggle, even as a person of faith, and I know you've talked about this on your podcast as well, is that I felt God had told me to do this.
Right.
Like he had clearly told me to do this. ABC. So if now I'm getting messages that, you know, it's not feeling right, I'm not fitting in, now it feels like more like me versus what God had. And so now it feels like I'm confused and I'm conflicted. And I'm just going on, you know, what God had told me before. But essentially that walk of faith and that surrender of God is knowing when God is making a shift, or God is bringing you in a space of, you know, I had you at this particular place because this is what I need you to be exposed to or know or learn or experience. But now I'm shifting you in a new place.
Yeah.
I'm making a shift. You said what?
How do you know when it is because you mentioned you're like, okay, when it was me, I was confused and I felt like, okay, this is not working out. So then I had to kind of listen and be attuned to, okay, actually, this is God probably telling me to make this turn.
To make this shift. It was a process.
Can relate to that. Okay, so it's a process of.
It was a process for me, and again, God had to arrange certain things and them go wrong primarily in my environment for me to be in tune. And that's what happened, Teka. I said, you know what? I'm supposed to be a counselor. I'm going to take this particular internship at it was a facility for children who have gone through abuse. And being transparent, I felt like, I had been through this. So, I can be, empathetic. I can be a capitalist. And that thing triggered me, Teka, on so many ways.
Poke at those areas.
It was poking too much. And I even went proactively to counseling to, in some ways, countervent that, but it just wasn't a fit. It didn't flow. And that particular internship was a hot mess. Like our supervisor that was running that particular facility, she was basically using us as interns to keep that facility alive because it was going under. Because the other previous owner basically decided that she wanted to go and run her own organization. And she took most of the other therapists and counselors with her. So it became very apparent that, we weren't getting the experience and I almost came very close to not getting my counseling hours. So guys like, okay, you say you're going to go here and do this, but what you think is there is not there. And God allowed me to see that. Again, there's also the intuitive intuition of not feeling like a fit, of being out of alignment. And then also, again, that other part of my intuition, knowing like I've experienced joy, fulfillment, and peace.
You know what it's supposed to feel like.
In another environment. Like I just don't have what I know I should be having when I'm doing this particular thing. The other thing that God allowed me to experience is that I also got a part-time job at a alcohol recovery outpatient residential facility. And when I tell you, Teka, that thing literally gave me anxiety. Like literally gave me physical anxiety. I didn't even know what it was. I went to the doctor. I had all types of tests run on me. And luckily, again, because I was already, in counseling, like I said, because I was, working through, some of, my experience from the past, because of blah, 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 blah. She said, you have anxiety. And I was like, she was like, your job is literally giving you anxiety. She was like, she's like, you should probably quit that job. Because at that point, it took me about a month to figure it out. But what happened, Teka, is that my job was on a Wednesday.
Right.
And what would happen is I would get to my job and I would feel on Thursday just this really strong tugging and pulling. And it was even coming out in like my urinary tract, like constantly feeling like I have to empty my bladder. And it would be so strong on Thursday. And then Friday it would get a little better. And then Saturday it would, already, Sunday it would be fine. Tuesday, no problem. Wednesday, pick right back up again. Wow. And it kept having that pattern of, what you also, it was psychosomatic. It was psychosomatic anxiety that I was having. And I quit. Once I realized that the job was literally gave me physical anxiety, I left that job. And the fact of me having to quit that job put me at a point of surrender because I was like, okay, God, I get it. Like, clearly my way isn't the way. Clearly I was under some misunderstanding, like ego, fear, like you said, even grief, mourning, whatever it is, I'm going to step back and allow you to guide me in the right direction. And essentially that's what he did. Like he connected me to another person in higher ed. I expressed to them my interest and they then connected me to somebody that ended up hiring me in a first generation college program.
Wow.
And again, I had so much fruit in that position. Like I built, different programs. I, impacted a lot of some of the students I'm even still connected to on Facebook to this day. Like I had so much fruit and light in that job. And again, once I surrendered and was like, you know what, I'm going to go with what this is. And I even, again, had to swallow my pride, surrendering. I went back to the guy who wanted to hire me for the career services job. And I said, you know what? I realized that, you know, I essentially made a mistake. Again, being humility, I made a mistake. I realized, you know, I'm having some difficulty, and, you know, and I have to change, and I would love for it to be able to come back here. And that man advocated. And I was afraid because I was like, dang, I turned down this opportunity. He's probably going to be mad at me. He's not going to want to receive me. He said, you know what? I'll give it a try. I'll reach out, see what I can do. And I end up in my second semester, my final semester for my internship in my program. I was in career services, and I was in that college access program. And the rest is history.
Listen,
the rest is history.
I hope that listeners kind of caught that nugget, that whenever you are in a space where you're not supposed to be, where you're in a space where you tried to take the reins and say, I'm going to control and be self-made and do everything in my own power to take over the trajectory of my life. Sometimes it means that you're going to be in spaces where you're going to experience literal emotional and physical discomfort, and sometimes even turmoil, to get you to make a change. So when you said that you wanted to experience, you knew what it felt like to experience peace and to thrive in environments. You were like, this ain't it. You know, we say God is not the author of confusion and or chaos. And so when you're in those spaces, you know that that's not your divine space. So when you said, okay, I'm supposed to experience peace, I'm supposed to experience a sense of confidence, and it's not going to be easy, but it is going to be, I like to say, easeful, meaning I'm going to have the tools and the skills I need to work through these challenges. And I'm going to feel like I am confident in the way that I'm moving through those challenges, versus, like you said, literally having psychosomatic symptoms, emotional turmoil, feeling literal anxiety walking through the door. Those are clear signs. So I hope the listeners pick that up, because that took you doing surrendering not only to divine purpose and direction, but to also humble yourself and to go back to the thing that you once rejected. And I think sometimes that's what we do too, right? We're like, that ain't for me. I'm not about to take that opportunity. That's not what I'm supposed to be doing. I need to do X, Y, Z. This is what I feel like it should look like. And it's like, well, hold on. Actually, I'm going to bring you back. And it's gonna require some humility, but that humility puts you in a space where you were able to thrive and really develop and hone in on your skills, because that is where you were meant to be. And I feel like that is another clear sign of when you're in a space, and it may not be easy, but it is easeful, meaning you have what you need to make it work. Another plug of our title. It will work out for you. So at this point, you're in grad school. Where'd you go to grad school, if you feel like sharing?
George Mason University.
All right. Shout out to the Patriots.
Woo, woo.
So you were in George Mason, and you're in this career services. So now it sounds like you are clear about, okay, this is going to be the path that I'm taking. I'm going to work in career services. What happened after you graduated from grad school? Because now you're in the internship, you're creating these programs, you making paths and opening paths for first generation college students. You know, you're doing what you feel is really connected not only to your purpose, but to your own story. So what happens next? Let's turn the page.
So that is a beautiful segue that you're bringing up as well, because both simultaneously being in career services, but also in a college access program, was feeding simultaneous passions that I had at the time. And I really struggled with my first opportunity in terms of post-graduation options. I was like, man, should I, just continue on this pathway into college access programs, or should I, go into career services as a career counselor or, whatever. And I can't remember what was the final thing, but essentially I decided to at least stay in college access.
Okay.
At least initially. And I think what I was also trying to do was like leverage my opportunity there, because I was in a part-time role and I was really trying to advocate myself to be a position full-time. But again, surrendering your pathway to God, that never happened. I had a position change and I had a promotion, but I was never made a full-time employee. And that thing started to wear on my spirit. So this is another aspect of surrender, right? Because again, you telling like God opened a pathway for this particular thing. But that particular thing, in hindsight, was only for a season. It was building it was building a foundation for God to create a pathway. And Teka, at this time, this is 2012, and this is the height of the recession. The height of the recession, okay? And to make a long story short, in the concept of time that we had, I looked outside for a full-time job for roughly 2 years and could not find one in the state of Virginia.
Because you weren't supposed to settle here.
It wasn't what God wanted for me in terms of what my particular path was. And again, I was dead on, like, I'm going to stay in Virginia. I'm going to give back to my community. This is my inspiration for my purpose. And this is what God's going to do. And, there's all these college access programs in Northern Virginia. So I know I can find something. Girl, I did not. I surely didn't. I did not. And I got to a place. And then again, like I said, being in that environment, but not feeling like my value was being recognized, having a lot of conflict with the women who were supposed to be supervising me, but didn't really have my expertise, but didn't have influence on it was creating a lot of pretty much interpersonal conflict at work. Okay. And in full transparency, I ended up being letting go because I literally just didn't feel supported. And I really, with the level of kind of like power that I was feeling was being exerted on me, but I also didn't feel like I had the power to speak up. Like it was also like a sense of withdrawal that I feel like I could also probably say that was happening for me as well. And I was unemployed. Wow. I was unemployed and I still continue to look, and again, that was a mourning, a grieving.
Too. Yeah.
Yes, because I felt like I had done so much work and I felt that work was just not acknowledged or recognized. But just like you said, that wasn't the place God had for me to stay. He had something else and planned for me. So of course, again, allowing your environment to give you cues and also understanding when, this season is up and the misalignment that starts to happen. I got to a place of, and again, I try even to go back to my hometown, 757, where you at, Hampton, Virginia. I even tried to move back to the 757 to see if I could find opportunities there. Nope. And it did not happen. And lo and behold, a connection that I had met from a conference about 2 years later sent me a job in Illinois.
Okay.
And that's the
far.
one.
That's not Virginia at all.
It's quite far. It's quite far. And I tell you, Teka, when I told God, I told God the audacity. You understand the audacity?
The gumption.
Going anywhere further than Maryland.
He said, all right, I'm going to
New York. Maybe New York. That's it. And God, again, because we talked about this before, I don't ascribe to God having an actual gender, because I see, both feminine and masculine attributes of God. But man, when I tell you, Mother Father God sent me to Illinois, the first time I had ever experienced negative.
Girl, you had your parka.
Negative below temperatures. Literally, I would walk to work and my face would feel like it was freezing. And that was the thing.
Space.
And then uncomfortable, started from scratch. I had no family, no friends. I started from the bottom, essentially.
Why do you
I had to start from scratch in my living space. I had no furniture. Me and my dad, when we moved me out to, I literally packed my Blanca with a suitcase of my professional clothes and basically the stuff I needed, like books and, like professional development stuff. And we drove me out to Illinois.
Yeah.
And that's all I had.
Why do you think, because this happens to a lot of us, we get comfortable. We feel like, okay, this is it. This is where I'm supposed to be. So I'm supposed to settle. This is going to be my long-term place. And then we have to move to another season where we are required to be uncomfortable. Physically, like you said, below negative temperatures, but also spiritually, emotionally, socially. Like you said, you had no family. You're in a space where, all right, I don't have no furniture. I don't really know anyone up here. I probably have one professional connection. I am starting from scratch. I'm starting from the bottom. And a lot of people can relate to that, where they feel like they have had to start from square one. When in actuality, I'm sure in retrospect, we can see it's not necessarily square one. It's just a space where you were required to be uncomfortable. Why do you think that was a requirement of you on your purpose journey for you to be?
I do. I believe, again, particularly whom I've been called to serve. Mm-hmm. I feel like there are certain things of just knowledge and awareness, but also actual empathy that I would not be able to connect and resonate if I had not experienced that thing. If I had not experienced what it really meant to feel disconnected, what it really felt to develop a personal brand, what it really felt to be able to essentially know who I am. Know who I really am, not who I am with other people when I have that outlet and support, but who am I? And essentially a lot of what I learned in that period of isolation, because there was literally, Teka, when I moved to Illinois, when I tell you I really did not have friends for a whole year and a half. I went a whole year and a half with really being independent in agency and really just me sitting with God. And in some cases, it was me learning a lot of my shadow work that needed to happen and my healing space. And I had nobody to filter that with. So in that period as well, God brought a lot of the work that I needed, particularly to do about my mother wound, that I had not really been in a space to really sit with and really be able to work on. Interestingly enough, the process as well of really, again, like I said, starting from my scratch with even my own like physical space of not having furniture, that whole process of like decorating and putting a vision together and really honing my sense of peace and cultivating my own space, I feel was also something that God had to teach me. That again, he's possibly used and, for other people of really understanding like your space does influences your emotions, your thoughts, your ability to really be at peace in your own skin, in your own space. He taught me that. The flip side of it, when we speed up a little bit, is COVID happened about 3 years ago. Yep. And we could not go outside or see anybody.
Locked down.
So interesting, God, all knowing, all powerful. And I don't know if he did this on purpose, but when COVID hit, I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna.
I've been here, done this
before. I'm just, I'm gonna do my little, personal projects. I'm gonna, I'm gonna read. I'm gonna journal. I'm gonna watch movies. I had already known how to sit, be still, and see the value of what God may have been doing in that stillness. Whereas before it would have been like a complete shock and, being turned on my head. And I know that happened with some people with COVID, but at least for me, man, having to be isolated in COVID was one of the probably the most still and peaceful times that I ever had. And I was also able, and I decided to work on my book. I took on that project. Yes, I got a lot of my book done that I had not been able to be as consistent about. So that's what I felt like, God was doing in that period of teaching me so many things that I did not realize needed to be processed and worked on in that time. And again, you're probably gonna, ask me other questions, but he brought me to a different space. But that season was such a critical season for me as a person to develop as a person, but also the particular calling that he had of who I needed to serve, giving me specific strengths and assets in that time that I wouldn't have experienced. And just really quick as well, because I know I've been talking a lot, but that first job I had, I was in a college access program.
Right.
But the second job, I realized, man, like something for me is missing, out of alignment again with focusing on college access. So then I made another shift and of strictly focusing on career services. That was my first strictly, because I was always putting career development into my other positions, but it was, the focus was different. So then I said, you know what, I'm going to really try it out or focus on this career services. But I was pretty much the only person of color from my background. I had so many marginalizations. Like I was one of the youngest. I was the only person of color. I was the only woman of color. I was the only single woman. And there were a lot of basically marginalizations that I experienced over the season of that time. And again, because who I'm called to serve, I had read about that thing. I had heard about that thing, but it is nothing compared to what you actually experience that thing. So God, again, had to walk me into a space where I experienced firsthand the things that he needed me to speak and witness and testify and serve. And that's what he needed. And I know that now. I know that now in hindsight, where before it was hard. Just like you said, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, but I know what he was doing there. And glory to God.
It's a important point to make that sometimes the seasons of solitude are necessary because they're the seasons where you do a lot of that healing work. Like you said, shadow work. If you're listening and you don't really know what shadow work is, basically what it is where you take the time to address the parts of you that you have kept hidden, the darker parts of you, the parts of you that you may not want to address, but they may be the parts of you that really do, either inform how you've been moving through the world or have been hindering how you're moving through the world. And we might not even necessarily know it because some of the ways or behaviors or thought processes have been conditioned. We have belief systems that have been, instilled and projected towards us. But that shadow work is so important because, like you said, it helped to build a sense of empathy for the people that you were called to work with. It helped you to be able to say, I understand wholeheartedly because I've been there. Not only in some of my younger year experiences, but even now as an adult who's navigating this professional world, and to feel like I'm the only, right? Here we are back again, feeling set apart. So I'm glad that you were able to share that with the listeners. Girl, this is your book, so you can talk as long as you need to. But I'm glad you shared that because that season in Illinois, I know this as your sister friend, but that season in Illinois was also temporary. And it kind of, and how did you know when you were done doing that work and it was time to make another shift? How did you know when it was time?
So again, walking with God. I can say that 3 months into this job, I knew I was not meant to stay there. I knew that was it happened that fast. I was like, this ain't it. And I don't know when's God's gonna have me. And so the interesting, like we're saying, knowing to be grown up with God, not baby with God, not teenager with God, like grown up with God, knowing that when I'm supposed to move, God's gonna tell me when I'm supposed to move, but knowing that it's not right now because it's clearly too early. And all of, like you were saying, the things that I experienced, but I allowed myself to walk through that journey. I allowed myself to be connected in the ways that I could connect, but also very aware of my mental health, how it was affecting me, leaning on the coping mechanisms that I had learned in my previous season, and just prayer. And also confessing my brokenness to someone that I had trusted. Because I really got to a place of for real depression with it. Because I felt boxed in. I felt caged in. I felt like, man, like I don't feel like, I don't feel free in this space. And I just, again, was just feeling so boxed in. And I was feeling, again, disconnected and set apart because, and lo and behold, I got to a low point. And I had kind of like a brother friend that I had connected with in that space. And I remember for whatever reason, we went to lunch one day and I came and confessed. I was like, I am depressed. I do not feel like myself. And he was a man of faith. And, he prayed for me. And he didn't pray for me in that moment, but he was a praying man. Because again, as well, like there was a church that I had found, but again, it wasn't speaking to me like my home. So it was, anyway, long story short, that man went home and he prayed for me. And I know that with 100% authority because I woke up the next day with a sense of peace and a sense of, I basically felt the shackles were removed on my spirit, basically. And I woke up with just a knowing that whatever God is doing in this space and whatever he's going to bring to me and what he needs me to, I'm going to focus on that. I'm not going to focus on my feelings. I'm not going to focus on, whatever, discouragement and, things that I feel are oppressive. I'm going to focus on my calling and what God has me to do in this space.
Yes.
And I literally felt that thing so strong the moment I woke up the next morning and put my feet on the floor.
Wow.
And I did a lot of cool stuff, like without, being too cocky about it. Like he invited me to do a tunnel for the tunnel of oppression. For those who maybe not be familiar with that, the tunnel of oppression is like a program that higher institutions do of basically like there are rooms or spaces of marginalized groups that people experience or become knowledgeable about. And I ended up doing a tunnel about student loan debt, believe it or not. Like people don't really think about socioeconomic status as a marginalization or an identity of depression. But at the time I was really struggling financially. A lot of it was really as a result of my student debt. And because I was, like a social justice advocate, I was really in tune with the things that were going on politically, socially at the time, and those conversations about it. So I did that tunnel. I had people come to me personally in my office at the time and told me, I really appreciated you doing this because this is something that I experienced.
I'm sure.
So I brought knowledge to that. I did kind of this citywide program. It was called Career Spark. It was basically like a way for students to get introduced to career development, middle schoolers. And there were different sessions pulled up. And that was a citywide event. Like that was held at the convention center. There were like hundreds of kids that was signed on to do that. And I supported my ally in the office. So that's really important. As a marginalized person, try to find at least one ally. And I had that point, I had identified one, maybe two allies in that space. And he was a queer man, queer white man. I want to specify he was a queer white man in that space. And he really supported, and I felt like saw me and advocated for me in different spaces. But we worked together on that program. I also did a diversity related program in my particular role. So I did a lot of things, basically speaking truth to power, right? Being able to advocate and develop things. And is that not my calling, right? And so once those shackles were removed, being able to confess that, and having that broken for me allowed me to be in that space, which then set me up to formulate a resume that was impressionable enough to submit once the time was right for the current position that I had.
Yeah. So being able to admit that things were not okay instead of trying to wear the mask, there is Sarah Jakes Roberts has a podcast called Woman Evolve, and her intro it's the same intro, but one of her intros says, God can't bless who you pretend to be. God can only bless you in the path that he created for you. And so it sounds like you had to remove the mask, admit with authenticity, but also with humility. Hey, I'm feeling this depression. I'm feeling like things are not okay for me. And in that truth, you open up the path for God to say, you know what? I see you. I'm going to make way for you. I'm going to put people in your life who are going to be allies and supportive of you, who are going to be praying for you so that you can build yourself up and build others up, impact and influence others to help you create that resume that you need to get you to the next season. So with this bomb resume, tell the people where that took you.
Yes, with the bomb resume, it essentially got me back home. Got me back where I felt
welcome back.
Yes, it got me back to Virginia. And I had Richmond on my radar for a while. And the wildest thing is when I went back and looked at, I can't remember when or why I had did it, but I had applied to my institution like 3 times. Prior, I had already applied to in other seasons of me looking for opportunities to my institution.
Wow. And
I was not called to an interview. I was not accepted. So again, right place, right time. God's timing is divine. He has a specific season for a specific thing. And it's so wild. When I talked to my supervisor about what was going on in our workspace prior to me being hired, it was chaos. Girl. It was chaos and it was toxic. And it was not until certain changes were made that the environment for me to thrive and for me, you know what I mean, to be aligned with that environment happened. So like I told you, I was feeling depressed, really feeling burdened. Every year though, usually around Christmas time, because again, God brings me home and at peace. And, I always recover and get refreshed when I, come back home, during like winter breaks and stuff. I would check in with God. I'd be like, God, I've had enough, but I want to move forward. What do I need to do? And I specifically remember God telling me that first year, not yet. So God told me not yet. So I said, all right, I licked my wounds. I went back home, whatever. And like I said, I talked to my brother friend I told you before, and I did that stuff. And I think that was I think it was between March, and I said, I went through March, May, all the way through. And I came back around again in December, and I said, God, I felt like I rise to the occasion. I've had enough. I was like, I would like to move on. And I clearly heard, okay. So I said that literally.
Pack your stuff.
That I started working on that resume and I got myself together and I started putting stuff out and I ended up connecting with my cousin Danielle, who's also been interviewed for my blog. I talked to her. She was living in Richmond at the time and she was like, you should think of Richmond. Da, da, da. It was at a family event and lo and behold, everything that I have dreamed about and really knew that I would be aligned with has happened in Richmond ever since. So it's almost been like this was, my my promised land almost, right? When you think of the children of Israel being oppressed, slavery, Pharaoh wanting to leave, can't leave, God parting the Red Sea, being stuck, you know what I mean? And Canaan, and all the stuff that needed to be tweezed out, that shadow work that needed to be pulled apart. And then for whatever reason, God raised up a Joshua, which probably was my cousin in that set, and was like, hey, it's time to go. You know what I mean? It's time to walk in. When I got to Richmond, literally, Teka, I kid you not, and I've talked about this in my newsletter, literally, when I got out of the limousine to interview for my institution, my soul said, this is it. Oof. This is it. And I cannot explain it other than intuition, the Holy Spirit, discernment, whatever you want to call that. I literally felt like this is it. And it's the rest is history. Like I said, I moved back. I moved to Richmond, got connected, with our organization, met some amazing friends that see me, that honor me, that are like-minded, that I can turn up with and be bougie with, you know what I mean? Like, that I can show all of my girl. Because we have a good time. And we can be fly in our pictures, and we are seriously a family. Like, seriously, when I literally say, like, it is not to say I haven't had other friends. I do still have friends that I value, but I have never been in a group of friends and have felt this genuinely loved and seen before. And that is something that I have always wanted in my heart. Yeah. And I know you were there, brought me to tears on my birthday when I was telling you all about that. But seriously, it was always something that I had dreamed and wanted. And I, take away the career stuff and the faith and all that. That was something that I had always really, really wanted in my heart. And I never felt that I would be able to get because I never had that before. Yeah. And I got that here. Same thing with my partner. I met my partner a year ago. I had prayed and pleaded and petitioned and even been, outright mad at God. I was like, girl, I've been woman. Like, where is my man at? What is the problem? But, I found my partner.
Hey, King.
Hey, Kings. I found my partner. And same thing, I have never felt so seen and loved and like-minded and set apart in a good way. I remember me and you one time when we were both single, right? God bringing people to walk along your path with when we did the Praying for Your Future husband challenge. Really, them talking about a consecrated relationship, like a relationship that God truly uses set apart, but in a good way, right? I've never had that, and I have that with my partner and so many things. And just the level of ability as well that I'm also able to influence and be involved with our social organization.
Yeah. Yeah.
Me being able to be a leader in that space and influence in that space, the previous, because it's a national organization that has various chapters. So in previous spaces, I was a part of that organization, but I really didn't feel connected to it enough to really come in and lead in that space. I got that enrichment too. And essentially, you know, the part about as well, like being closer to my family. And I'm in the sweet spots for both of my family units. Like, you know, I have brothers and family that live in the 757, just an hour and a half away. I have my dad who also lives in Northern Virginia, another hour and a half away. So I'm literally in the sweet spot of being able to be connected to my actual family. And a lot of core family members as well lived in Maryland. Now, my madre, my godmother, my second mother, she moved away to Florida, but that's a whole thing. But I'm still on the East Coast. I'm still closer.
You're closer, yeah.
So I'm closer, and so it's still technically accessible. And my dad and his girlfriend took me down there to go see my abuelita when she wasn't sick. And, I mean, when she was sick, and, you know, I really wanted to see her. So that's not necessary. And we drove down there now because that was also like really like still COVID. People weren't really, you know, comfortable with traveling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, that gave me more accessibility to my family being in that space. So when I tell you my life has really come around like full circle in a way that I have always wanted. Glory be to God.
Listen,
my business too. My business being able to be connected to resources. My business has grown. My platforms that grow. So when I say like every aspect of my life is bearing fruit in a way that could not have essentially the good soil, right? I suppose. Literally the soil, like literally.
Yes. And but you had to go through all of that. You had to go through the pruning. You had to go through the budding stages. You had to go through the uprooting stages.
The harvesting.
So for people who are in that, let's say there's a listener who's in the stage where they feel like maybe they are being uprooted, or maybe they feel like they're in the beginning, the budding stages where it's uncomfortable. Maybe it's still dark. Maybe it still feels like, I don't even know what this is about to look like, but I know that I'm being grown and refined and pruned and all of that in this season. What is some encouragement that you would give them as we come to the close of your story?
Yeah, it sounds so cliche, but when I tell you, you know, with full authority that it does not always feel good, but God truly does have a plan. Yeah. And when you really surrender yourself to allow yourself to grow where you're planted, whatever you have available to you, just able to be present, being present to your experience, not dismissing it, but being authentic and honest about that, but then being able to put whatever amount of energy you have, because again, you could be depressed, you could be anxious, you could be whatever. But whatever you have, whatever you can pull up, if you just put that thing into what you have in that season, and just follow it through. Just follow it through. Just make it work.
Make it work. I love
just
that.
Make whatever you have work, and God will work out the rest. God's got the rest of it. He's again, Mother, Father, God, they just ask you to trust and work with what you have, and they will give you the rest. And I came to a point with that with my business too. I was like, you know, God, I don't have the money. I don't have this. I don't have that. And I literally, because it's so weird how God would speak. God would speak to you however they want to speak to you. And I think I saw, I think it was a meme on Facebook or something to that. And it said something to the extent of, use what I gave you, God.
Use what I gave you.
So I just decided to make it I just made it an Insta blog.
Yeah.
I had my phone, I had pictures, and I had my gift for writing.
And you made it work.
And that's what, and I made it work. And God gave me additional resources and platforms to be able to grow it into an actual blog website, to an actual business, to an actual thing. But when I tell you, Teka, and that was in 2017.
Wow.
So that was 6 or 7 years ago. And when I tell you, Teka, anytime I struggle with content, I have the content. Like I know I started a marketing campaign on, IG Live now. I literally went back. I was like, man, what am I going to create videos about? Do you know, I just go back.
You have the content.
All that time creating, organizing, building content, trusting God on what he gave me, my voice, my inspiration, my whatever. And I just schedule it when I have. And the thing is, the way that God has built and grown my purpose, of course, I have followers and people that didn't know me then. So they don't necessarily see the content that I have 7 years ago.
Well, they need it. And there's people who need to tap in. And so I'm glad that you went back. I'm glad that you trusted that, hey, I'm going to use what I have. And I feel like that is where people can connect the determination and the faith to trust that what I'm putting out there is going to reach who it needs to reach, and the determination to take what I have and to use it, to make it work, to let my offerings speak for themselves. So I'm really glad that you shared your story. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for pouring into our listeners. I'm encouraged by listening to your story. Even though we've talked about it, there were parts where I had no clue. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't know that. So thank you for sharing that vulnerably and really bravely. I'm going to take a breath really quick and just sit with that and remind people that even though you may feel like it's not working out right now, know that it is going to work out for your good. You just have to trust it. So,
amen. Let the church say amen.
Let the church. All right.
Amen.
So, what we're going to do next, good people, is we're going to move into our next segment, which most of you have heard. It is called Gift. GIFT is an acronym. It is our gratitude practice. G stands for gratitude or goal. The I stands for intention. The F is for faith or focus. And the T is for take action. So really what you're doing is you're taking each of those words in the acronym and you're putting forth a gratitude practice, and you're setting some intentions, and then you're holding yourself accountable. So for me, I'll go first. My gratitude at this point right now is actually we kind of talked about it, is for my family, for the people who are in my community, who during seasons of my life where I did not really know what was going on, I may have felt directionless, I may have felt alone, like you mentioned, that I had people who were cheering me on from the sidelines, even if they weren't in the exact predicaments that I was in, they were cheering me on. So I'm really grateful for my family. My intention is to be present this holiday weekend. We have a 3-day weekend, so I'm going to try to be present. If you're listening to this, we're going through the Memorial Day weekend holiday. It's going to probably pass when you're hearing this, but my intention is to be present, to just be in the moment and not think about work. I'm going to try not to think about work, and not think about all the things I have to do, and just be. My faith is that any shift or pivot that I've made is going to work out for my good. I'm in a season where I have had to make quite a few shifts and pivots, and I'm okay with that. So I have faith that it's going to work out. And my take action, you mentioned something that you were doing is in your solitude, you were really giving yourself the time to journal and to read more. And I feel like a lot of people may be scared of that solitude. So my take action is to really be intentional about taking some moments of solitude to journal, to read, to pour into myself again in the way that my younger version absolutely loved. I loved journaling and reading when I was younger. And now it feels like all I do is read and write for work. So that is my take action, is to bring myself back to a point of healthy solitude so that I can do some of that journaling and reading to pour back into myself. So that is my gift. For you, our special guest, Miss Krystle, what is your gift? What's your G, gratitude or goal? You can choose either one.
Yes, my gratitude is just the miraculous knowing power of, my faith walk. And just to be at, like I said, this space of my life of, walking in peace and power. Especially within this past year, the people that in my life has, say like, thank you. You're really an example of self-love or purpose or this, the pathway to get there, we've talked about, has not been easy. So I'm just so thankful of that. My intention, right? My intention is to surrender my introversion a little bit more, and realizing that by being in this space, I feel like God is pushing me into a place of being more in community, being more out there, putting myself out there. I started more with, my videos on Instagram and stuff, but I've been really resistant to that, but being that apparently, my story, God wants to use me and my story. So learning, intentionally becoming more comfortable with putting myself more out there. And
I'm proud of you for doing that, by the way, because I see you.
Oh, thank you, girl.
I see
you. My faith and focus is to surrender my perfectionism and the process. Girl, yes. To realize it ain't always going to be perfect. I'm not always going to have the tools. I don't even know how to really, do videography and all this kind of stuff. But the faith that whoever is supposed to receive it in the way that I have to put it out there, again, surrendering, like allow myself to, it doesn't, and a nugget that I got with one of the amazing people that I met out in Illinois, she said something so profound. She's like my Illinois grandma at this point in time, but she said, it doesn't have to be perfect for people to get the message. And I never forgot that. So that is my focus, to allow it to not be perfect and trust that whomever is supposed to get it gets it.
And now your take action.
And my take action, my take action is similar to what you said with your intention, but it's my take action because I am acknowledging that I'm an introvert and I don't want to burn myself out. So my take action is to also build that downtime. That process time, and allowing myself to really balance out when I need to be upfront and when I need to take step back. Because I don't want to burn myself out.
That's real.
Yeah. That's real. I don't want to burn myself out, and I don't want to sacrifice, the mission by, that. So that's my take action. My take action is to build in the time for rest.
Yes.
With the time of movement. Started this weekend as well. I've been on with Urban League, the live, the business.
You have been busy. Yeah.
I started graduate school this past week. I have a class. Well, I've already been in grad school, but I have another class that I'm taking. So Saturday, Sunday, off limits. Yeah.
Please rest. I be getting on you, girl. Put it down. Rest. Thank you for sharing your gift with us. And if you listeners want to do the same thing, get your journal, get your pen and paper, write down your gratitude practice, write down your intention, your faith, your focus, and how you're going to take action, because we can say it, but we need to be held accountable to also take some action and make some moves and do it. So thank you for that. The last segment is one of my favorites because although I am definitely an advocate and an enthusiast for mental health and for faith, I also really love music, especially live music. And so if you, any of the listeners have ever read my blog, heyteka.com, at the end of every blog post, I have what's called Vibe Tunes ATM. And Vibe Tunes ATM means the vibe tunes I'm listening to at the moment, ATM. So I want us to share just kind of with the listeners, what is some music or a song or two that kind of goes along with the topic we've been talking about, goes along with your book, or even goes along with some of the chapters in your book. So I'll let you think about that. And I'm going to share mine. Because as we were talking, we kind of vacillated back and forth between how we were embracing solitude, but also how we felt, even though we were set apart, we needed community. We needed to feel a sense of belonging. And I think that's really important because it's part of our human experience, needing to belong in community, to be connected. And so there's an artist, I remember, I feel like I just played her out, not in a bad way, during the pandemic. And her name is Erin Allen Kane. Let me make sure I spell her name right. And of course, y'all, I'm going to put the link in the show notes, but ERYN, Allen, ALLEN, Kane, KANE. She has this song off of one of her projects called With You. The song title is With You. And it's basically I would say an encouraging, affirming anthem of sorts, where it talks about even when you're going through situations and seasons that are tough for you, know that your friends, your family, your loved ones, your support, that they're with you. And that we just have to make time for each other, to listen to each other, to love on each other. And so I really love that song. I feel like I would listen to it while driving during some of my down seasons, and I'll just be weeping, but also weeping in a way where I'm grateful that I have my community. So my song is With You by Erin Allen Kane, and I'll put that in the show notes. So, Krystle, if you have one or a couple, what's a song or a vibe tune that you would like to share with our listeners?
Okay, I have a handful, and I know that I mentioned some of them in the talk that we had, and I was like, ooh, let's try to think of songs, because I love me some music too.
Yes.
I have a couple of playlists, but Started From the Bottom by Drake.
Hey.
That would definitely be in there. Started From the Bottom, now we're here. Because we made it. That season of solitude, it would be Ascension by Janae Aiko. I think Brandy's on that song too. It just talks about like being in a really difficult place, but knowing that you're going to go to a higher level. And sometimes even now when I'm in a difficult time, I just sit with that song and just meditate on it and let it basically reset my vibration. God Did by DJ Khaled. That was kind of the theme of my life. I mean, God did it. He got me here, you know what I mean, on my path. And when I talk about the part about finding our family, the We Got Love, I can't remember. It's like, we got love, love, love. You better believe it. I can't remember.
You gotta send me the artist.
Yeah.
I feel like I know what song you're talking about. What came to mind was Tiana Taylor, but I feel like that's not the song you're talking about.
Yeah, it is. I believe it's I can't remember.
Is it Tiana
Taylor? I'm literally looking. We got...
Maybe it is. I feel like I'm a little...
It's Tiana Taylor.
Boom.
Yeah. So We Got Love by Tiana Taylor. And then lastly, it will be Move Forever by Beyonce and Jay-Z. Yes. Just again, being in a season of fruit, growth with my partner, just feeling genuinely happy and peaceful in a place that, again, I didn't have at other places of my life. So
I love that. Girl, you didn't give us a playlist. I'm here for it. If you're listening, I'm going to put all the links in the show notes. Go ahead and grab all of those and create your playlist for those seasons where you want to feel good, where you need to ascend, where you need to remind yourself of some things. Listen, music is definitely powerful. I definitely believe in the power of music, of the vibrational waves, of different sounds, notes, sequences, cadences. All of that is important. Maybe I'll talk about that one day on the podcast, why music is so healing and the mental health benefits of music for sure. Alrighty. Well, y'all, we are at the close of our podcast. I just want to say again, Krystle, sis, I really appreciate your vulnerability. I appreciate you sharing your story. I appreciate you being brave and courageous to say, hey, I've been there. I know what it feels like to feel the anxiety, the depression, the loneliness. But look at what moving through that and not resisting it can do. Look at what surrendering and having faith can do. So I appreciate that. And I'm sure the listeners have too. Before we go, where can our listeners find you online? Because you mentioned a lot about your business, your blog. So tell us where they can find you.
Absolutely. So my website is a great place in terms of definitely my blog content, but my services and things are listed as well. I actually have a sale going on. It's the Level Up season sale. 40% off of career services and coaching. And then I'm doing a $100 purpose bundle offer. So if you're interested in that, you can access that and ask for more. Look into it on my website, Krystle Dorsey, KrystleDorsey.com. Both my social media, IG and Twitter is KD Uplifts _you. My Insta blog still, a thing. You can see my reels and, my other content on both Instagram, as well as Twitter. And then my Facebook is KD Uplift, or Krystle Dorsey, M.Ed. So you can find that on Facebook as well.
All righty. Well, I'll definitely link all of those. Is there any coupon code or anything for the sales that you have going on, or people just have to reach out and start the process?
Yeah, really people just reach out on the content form on my website. And, I know what's going on. So depending, and there's always a clarity call, especially if you want a career services or a career service, or you're interested in a coaching, either bundle or just one coaching session. I always do a clarity call just to touch base, really see what people are looking for and just to clarify what I offer. So if they just reach out on my contact page or DM me and one of my social medias, I will just, depending on what we identify as the best fit, I will then offer it to them.
Good to know. Good to know. And this is not just for people in our state of Virginia. This is for anybody.
Yeah, this is for anybody. I offer a mobile business. It's online. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, y'all tap in, get connected to Krystle, get clear about your purpose, get on a direction when it comes to your career. It'll change your life. Krystle helped me get clear about some things when it comes to my career. She has helped a lot of people that I am connected to. So don't skip. Don't miss out. Tap in. All right.
I'll be playing, y'all. Come on now. Invest in yourself.
Here we are. Yes. Invest in yourself. Come on, friends. So Again, thank y'all so much for listening to Here We Are, the Mindful Podcast for Millennials. Let's connect on Instagram at the Here We Are Pod, Facebook at Here We Are Podcast with Teka, and also on YouTube at Here We Are Pod. And if you are loving the podcast, I'd be so honored if you go ahead and subscribe, rate, hit those 5 stars, and leave me a review. If you yourself want to share your story, want to inspire and encourage someone on a future episode, or maybe you even have something that you want to share with Krystle, send her a shout out, email us at theherewearepod@gmail.com. Know that just the way that you were inspired today by Krystle's story, you can inspire and encourage someone too. Remember, y'all, breathe in the present moment. Take care.